Dominic Conner, a cynical Yale finance student working at a luxury car dealership for the summer, meets his match in Amelia Amy Stone, the wealthy, art history-bound daughter of a powerful hedge fund manager. What starts as a disastrous car sale, where Amy insists on buying a death trap with style, a vintage 1987 Mercedes, quickly spirals into an intense, witty exploration of their opposing worldviews. From Porsche Cayenne to vintage Mercedes, finding love and meaning in a luxury car dealership. Part 1, in which our hero questions his life choices. Dominic Conner had precisely 3 thoughts as he watched the silver Porsche Cayenne pull into the dealership lot on that unbearably humid Saturday afternoon in July. First, that car costs more than my entire Yale tuition. Second, the driver probably tips more than I make in a week. Third, I should have taken that unpaid internship at Goldman Sachs like Mom suggested. But no, Dominic had principles, lofty, idiotic principles about not wanting to perpetuate nepotism — his mother was a managing director at Goldman — and wanting to earn his own way, and other such noble garbage that sounded excellent in his head at 2 a.m., but considerably less brilliant when standing in 95-degree heat wearing a polyester blend suit that made him sweat in places he didn't know could sweat. The Porsche door opened, and out stepped a man who looked like he'd been assembled by a team of stylists specifically to make Dominic feel inadequate about his entire existence. Tall, silver-haired, wearing what was definitely a bespoke suit that probably cost more than the Honda Civic Dominic was supposed to be pushing on budget-conscious millennials, his manager Barry's words, not his. "Good afternoon," Dominic called out, employing his customer service voice, the one that was 2 octaves higher than his natural register and made him sound like an enthusiastic golden retriever. "Welcome to Prestige Motors. I'm Dominic, and I'd be happy to help you find your perfect vehicle today." He'd said this exact sentence approximately 473 times in the past 3 months. He'd started keeping count after customer number 100, partly out of boredom and partly because he was considering using the data for his behavioral economics seminar in the fall. The silver-haired man regarded him with the particular expression wealthy people reserved for service workers, a mixture of polite interest and the vague confusion of someone trying to remember if they'd turned off the stove before leaving the house. "August Stone," the man said, extending his hand. His handshake was firm, practiced, probably workshopped at some executive retreat in the Hamptons. "I'm here to purchase a vehicle for my daughter. Something safe, reliable, not too flashy." Translation, Dominic thought, something that costs more than a brownstone in Brooklyn, but doesn't look like I'm compensating for anything. "Absolutely, we have several excellent options that would be perfect for—" The passenger door of the Porsche opened. Dominic forgot how to finish his sentence. Later, when recounting this story to his roommate Tyler, who would find the entire thing unbearably hilarious, Dominic would struggle to articulate exactly what happened in that moment. It wasn't love at first sight. Dominic was far too cynical and had read far too many studies on the neurochemical reality of attraction to believe in such fairy tale nonsense. But it was definitely something at first sight. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back in a careless ponytail, wearing ripped jeans and a faded band t-shirt that proclaimed her allegiance to the Smiths. She had her father's height, but none of his polished perfection. There was a smudge of what looked like paint on her cheek. Her sneakers were held together with what appeared to be bucked tape and hope, and she was looking at the dealership with the exact expression Dominic felt every morning when his alarm went off, a mixture of existential dread and profound irritation. She was, in technical terms, completely out of his league. Also, she was apparently 18, which meant she was 3 years younger than him, which shouldn't have mattered, but somehow felt significant, like the universe's way of saying, "Yes, Dominic, she's gorgeous, and no, you absolute buffoon, you have no business thinking whatever thoughts you're currently thinking." "This is my daughter, Amelia," August Stone said, oblivious to the small crisis occurring in Dominic's prefrontal cortex. "She just graduated high school, heading to Columbia in the fall." Of course she is, Dominic thought. Of course, the beautiful, paint-smudged girl with excellent taste in depressing British music is going to Columbia. Of course. Congratulations, Dominic managed, finding his voice somewhere in the vicinity of his shoes. Columbia's a great school. I'm at Yale myself, actually, studying finance. Amelia looked at him properly for the first time, and Dominic felt the full force of her gaze like a physical thing. Her eyes were gray. Not blue-gray or green-gray, but actual gray, like storm clouds or expensive wool sweaters or other pretentious things poets wrote about. Yale, she said, and her voice was lower than he'd expected, slightly raspy, like she'd spent the morning shouting or singing or both. Let me guess, Skull and Bones, future Wall Street overlord, planning to buy your third yacht by 30? Dominic blinked. What? Amy, her father said wearily, in the tone of someone who'd had this exact conversation many times before, please be civil. I'm being perfectly civil, Amelia Amy said, still looking at Dominic with what he was fairly certain was barely concealed contempt. I'm just making conversation. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Make small talk while we engage in the late-stage capitalist ritual of purchasing a depreciating asset that's actively destroying the planet? You know, Dominic said slowly, when most people say hello, they just say hello. I'm not most people. I'm getting that impression, yes. August Stone pinched the bridge of his nose. If you two are finished, I'd like to actually purchase a vehicle at some point today. Dominic, was it? What would you recommend for a first-time driver? Dominic tore his attention away from Amy, who was now examining her fingernails with exaggerated disinterest. Right, yes, vehicles. He pulled out his mental catalog of cars, trying to calculate what exactly a hedge fund manager would consider not too flashy, while also meeting the safety requirements of a concerned father. Well, we have several excellent SUVs, great safety ratings, plenty of space, and... I don't want an SUV, Amy interrupted. I want that one. She was pointing at the far corner of the lot. At the 1987 Mercedes 560 SL convertible that Barry had accepted as a trade-in against his better judgment and that had been sitting unmoved for the past 6 weeks. That's a 35-year-old car, August said flatly. It's a classic. It's a death trap. It's a death trap with style. Amy, Dad, you said I could pick. I said you could pick from reasonable options. That's a reasonable option. That car is older than you are. So is most of the art you collect, and I don't see you complaining about that. Dominic watched this exchange like a tennis match, his head swiveling back and forth between father and daughter. There was something fascinating about seeing August Stone, who almost certainly made billion-dollar decisions before breakfast, being outmaneuvered by his teenage daughter. The Mercedes is actually a great choice, Dominic heard himself say, which was absolutely not what he should have been saying if he wanted to make an actual commission, but his mouth appeared to have disconnected from his brain. Classic design, strong engine, and parts are still relatively easy to find. I could take you both for a test drive? August looked at him like he'd suggested they all go skydiving without parachutes. Amy looked at him like she was reassessing her initial judgment. See, she said to her father, the Yale finance bro agrees with me. I'm not a... Dominic started, then stopped. Actually, you know what? Fair. That's fair. Let me get the keys. Part 2, in which test drives are taken and worldviews are challenged. The Mercedes, against all odds and possibly several laws of physics, actually started. Dominic slid into the driver's seat, August Stone took the passenger side after examining every inch of the interior with the intensity of a man conducting a Homeland Security check, and Amy folded herself into the back, which was less of a seat and more of a suggestion of where a seat might theoretically exist. So, Dominic said, adjusting the mirror and trying to remember the last time he'd driven something that wasn't his roommate's 2005 Honda that smelled permanently of old gym socks, Columbia, what are you planning to study? Art history, Amy said.
From the front seat, August made a small noise that might have been a cough or might have been a suppressed scream. "That's cool," Dominic said, pulling out of the parking space. The Mercedes handled like a boat, if boats had steering wheels and an alarming tendency to drift left.
"You paint? I noticed the paint on your—" He gestured vaguely at his own face. Amy touched her cheek, found the smudge, and rubbed at it with her sleeve, succeeding only in making it worse. "Yes," she said, in a tone that suggested the conversation was over. Dominic, who had never been good at reading social cues when he was interested in someone, according to his ex-girlfriend Sarah, who'd broken up with him via a PowerPoint presentation that had included citations, pressed on. "What kind of art?" "The kind that doesn't make any money, apparently," August muttered. "Mixed media," Amy said, louder. "Collage work, mostly. Some installation pieces. Nothing that would interest a future hedge fund manager." "I'm not going to be a hedge fund manager," Dominic said, taking a right turn onto the main road. "I'm going into sustainable investing, impact funds, green energy portfolios, that sort of thing." This was actually true. Dominic had spent his entire sophomore year having what his roommate called an existential crisis, but make it financial, after reading one too many reports on climate change and realizing that his planned career trajectory would basically make him part of the problem. Amy was quiet for a moment. "Huh," she finally said. "Huh? Nothing, just, huh. Is that a good huh or a bad huh?" "It's a huh. That's not a thing." "It is now." August Stone was watching this exchange with the expression of a man realizing he'd made a terrible mistake, but wasn't sure exactly which decision had led him to this moment. "The car seems to run well," he said, clearly desperate to redirect the conversation. "What's the mileage?" 83,000, Dominic said, which for a car this age is actually pretty good. The previous owner was a collector, barely drove it. We did a full inspection when we took it in. Engine sound, transmission solid, new brake pads. "Does it have airbags?" It has seatbelts. "Airbags weren't standard until 1989, Amy said from the back seat. "I researched it." "Of course you did," her father said wearily. They drove in silence for a few minutes, cruising through the tree-lined streets of Greenwich, Connecticut, where even the birds looked expensive. Dominic snuck glances at Amy in the rearview mirror. She was looking out the window, her fingers drumming against her knee to some internal rhythm. "Can I ask you something?" Dominic said, unable to help himself. "That depends on what you're asking," Amy replied. "Why this car, specifically?" She was quiet for long enough that Dominic thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, "My mom had one. Same model, same year. Silver, like this one." Her voice was different now, softer. "She sold it when I was 10. I barely remember it. Just flashes. The way the leather smelled, how the engine sounded. She used to drive me to art class in it every Saturday." August Stone's expression did something complicated. "Amy," he started. "I know it's stupid," she continued, still looking out the window. "I know it's just a car. I know Mom's in London with her new husband and her new life, and probably doesn't even remember that car. But I remember, and I just—" She trailed off. Dominic felt something in his chest twist uncomfortably. "It's not stupid," he said quietly. Amy met his eyes in the rearview mirror. For a moment, something passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or a recognition. The acknowledgement that sometimes people wanted things for reasons that didn't make logical sense, but made perfect emotional sense, and that was okay. "We'll take it," August said abruptly. "What?" Amy sat forward. "Really?" "Really." He turned to look at his daughter, and his expression was softer than Dominic had seen it. "But you're paying for insurance, and if you get so much as a parking ticket, I'm selling it and buying you a Volvo." "Deal," Amy said immediately. "Thanks, Dad." Part 3, in which paperwork is boring, but conversations are not. Back at the dealership, Dominic ushered them into his office, which was actually just a desk in a corner that he shared with 2 other salespeople and which had a concerning stain on the carpet that everyone had agreed to never discuss. "This'll take about 30 minutes, Dominic said, pulling up the necessary forms on his computer, which was running on Windows Vista and the prayers of the IT department. "I'll need to see your driver's license, Amy, and—" "Here," she said, already holding it out. Her hand brushed his as he took it. Dominic dropped the license. "Sorry," they both said simultaneously. "You first," they said, again in unison. August Stone was watching them with the expression of a man realizing something he wasn't sure he was happy about realizing. Dominic picked up the license, studiously avoiding eye contact, and focused on entering the information. Amelia Jane Stone. Birthday, March 15th. Address, somewhere in Manhattan that probably required a 7-figure income just to walk past. "So," August said, settling into the uncomfortable plastic chair that Barry had gotten from a liquidation sale. "Yale, finance. That's quite the combination. What year are you?" "Going into my senior year," Dominic said, typing carefully because the keyboard had a tendency to stick on the letter E, and he'd once accidentally registered a car to someone named Mr. E. Iankins. "Taking my CFA Level 1 exam in December." "Ambitious." August leaned back, and Dominic recognized the posture. This was an interview, disguised as small talk. "What made you choose finance?" "Honestly, I'm good at math and I like money," Dominic said, then immediately regretted it when he saw Amy's expression. "Wait, that came out wrong. I mean, yes, I like money. Everyone likes money. But what I actually like is the puzzle of it. The way markets move, the way human behavior affects economic systems, the way you can theoretically use capital as a force for positive change if you're strategic about it." "Theoretically," Amy repeated, and there was definitely a smirk playing at the corner of her mouth. "Yes, theoretically. I'm not naive enough to think finance is some noble calling, but I'm also not cynical enough to think it can't be part of the solution." He looked at her directly. "And before you say it, yes, I know how that sounds coming from a Yale student working at a luxury car dealership. The irony isn't lost on me." "I wasn't going to say anything," Amy said, but she was fully smirking now. "Yes, you were." "Okay, yes, I was." August was definitely smiling now too, though he was trying to hide it behind his hand. "You know," he said to Dominic, "you remind me of myself at your age. Same certainty that you could change the system from within, same idealism dressed up in pragmatic language." "Did it work?" Dominic asked, genuinely curious. "The changing the system thing?" August considered this. "I made a lot of money. I employ a lot of people. I've funded scholarships and hospitals and research initiatives." He paused. "But I also contributed to a system that's fundamentally extractive. So, the answer is complicated." "Dad's having one of his philosophical moments," Amy said. "This usually happens after he's read a particularly scathing article about wealth inequality." "I'm allowed to have complicated feelings about my chosen profession," August said mildly. "I know. It's actually one of your better qualities." There was clear affection in her voice, and Dominic found himself wondering about their relationship. August Stone had the reputation, Dominic had Googled him obviously, of being brilliant, ruthless, and intensely private. But here, with his daughter, he just seemed like a dad trying his best. "Okay," Dominic said, clicking through the final forms. "I just need signatures here, here, and initial here." The computer made a sound like a dying whale and went blue screen. "No," Dominic said. "No, not now." "Is that Windows Vista?" Amy asked, leaning forward to look. "Yes, and before you judge me, I want to state for the record that I have filed 17 formal complaints about this computer." 17 exactly? "I keep a log." "Of course you do." The computer restarted itself, slowly, while making sounds that suggested it was reconsidering its life choices. "This is going to take a while," Dominic said apologetically. "The system has to reload everything from scratch." "It's fine," August said, checking his watch, "though I do have a call with Tokyo in 45 minutes. "You can take it in here if you need to," Dominic offered. "There's a conference room that's usually empty." His phone buzzed. A text from Barry. "Customer, waiting, blue BMW, now." Dominic suppressed a sigh. Actually, I'm really sorry, but I need to go help another customer for a moment. The computer should be back up in about 10 minutes. I can wait with the computer, Amy offered. Both Dominic and August looked at her. What? She said. I'm just going to sit here anyway. Might as well stare at a loading screen instead of my phone. I don't think, August started. Dad, I'm 18. I can handle sitting in an office unsupervised. It's fine with me, Dominic said, though part of his brain was screaming that leaving a potential customer's daughter alone with access to his computer was probably against at least 17 company policies. Just, don't touch anything? The system's temperamental. I'll guard it with my life, Amy said solemnly. Part 4, in which computers misbehave and walls come down. Dominic spent the next 20 minutes trying to sell a BMW 3 Series to a man who kept insisting he wanted something subtle while pointing at the most expensive options available. By the time he returned to his desk, August was on his phone speaking rapid Japanese in what sounded like the conference room, and Amy was exactly where he'd left her, staring at his computer screen, which was now displaying his personal email. That's not the registration system, Dominic said carefully. I know, Amy said. Your computer finished loading and your email auto-opened. I wasn't snooping, but I couldn't help but notice the subject line of your most recent message. Dominic's stomach dropped as he remembered what his most recent email was. A response to his professor about his thesis proposal on the ethical implications of ESG investing in emerging markets, which he'd titled, in a fit of 3 a.m. energy, How to Save the World Without Being a Self-Righteous Prick About It. I can explain, he started. This is actually really good, Amy interrupted, gesturing at the screen. Your analysis of how traditional impact investing metrics fail to account for local economic disruption. Can I read the full proposal? Dominic sat down slowly. You want to read my thesis proposal? Is that weird? It's 40 pages of economic theory and citations. I like reading. It's really boring. I'm an art history major who reads theoretical papers about postmodernist interpretations of Renaissance allegory for fun. Try me. They looked at each other. Okay, Dominic said, but you have to tell me if you actually find it interesting or if you're just being polite. I'm never just polite, Amy said. Ask anyone. He pulled up the proposal and angled the screen toward her. She leaned in, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something citrusy and clean, and started reading. Dominic watched her face, trying to gauge her reaction. She read slowly, carefully, occasionally scrolling back up to reread a section. Her eyebrows drew together when she concentrated. She bit her lower lip when something interested her. He was completely and utterly doomed. This part, she said, pointing at a paragraph about stakeholder capitalism, you're basically arguing that the entire system of measuring investment success is fundamentally flawed because it only accounts for shareholder value and not community impact. Yes, that's pretty radical for a finance major. It's only radical because we've normalized a system that's insane. Why should the primary measure of a company's success be how much wealth it generates for people who already have wealth? Amy sat back, studying him. You know, when I first saw you, I thought you were going to be like every other finance bro I've met. All Excel spreadsheets and no soul. And now? Now, I think you're an Excel spreadsheet with a soul, which is somehow more unsettling. Dominic laughed. I think that's the nicest mean thing anyone's ever said to me. I have a gift. August returned then, pocketing his phone. Tokyo is handled. How's the paperwork? Just finishing up, Dominic said, quickly switching back to the registration system, which had, miraculously, stayed loaded. He printed the final forms, had everyone sign in the appropriate places, and processed the payment, which made his commission for the month, but also made him slightly nauseous at the casual way August Stone wired over $60,000. All set, Dominic said, handing over the keys. The car's yours. Amy took the keys, and her smile was genuine and bright, and made Dominic's heart do something aerobically inadvisable. Thank you, she said, seriously. For the car, and for, she gestured vaguely at the computer, having a soul.
It's a blessing and a curse, Dominic said. They stood there for a moment, neither moving. August cleared his throat. Amy, we should get going. I'm sure Dominic has other customers. Right, yes, other customers. Dominic didn't have other customers, but he appreciated the out. Congratulations again on the car, and on Columbia. Thanks. Amy hesitated, then said, Good luck with your thesis, and with the saving the world thing. Good luck with the art, and with the dismantling capitalism thing. I feel like you two are speaking in code, August observed. They probably were. Amy and her father headed toward the door, and Dominic watched them go, already mentally composing the text he was going to send Tyler about this entire interaction. Then Amy stopped and turned around. Hey, she called back, do you have a business card or something? Dominic's brain short-circuited. What? A business card for the dealership, in case I have questions about the car. Oh, right, car questions. He fumbled through his desk drawer, found one of his cards, which Barry had printed on the cheapest possible cardstock, and which made him look like an accountant going through a midlife crisis, and walked over to hand it to her. Their fingers brushed again. Neither of them mentioned it. Thanks, Amy said, looking at the card. Dominic Conner, Prestige Motors, helping you drive your dreams. She looked up. Did you come up with that slogan? God, no. Barry did.
It's terrible. It's spectacularly terrible. The worst part is he's really proud of it. She was smiling again, and Dominic realized he would do embarrassing things to keep her smiling like that. I'll call if I have any car problems, she said. I'll pretend I know how to fix them, he replied. August was watching this entire exchange with the expression of a man doing complex calculations in his head. This time, when they left, they actually left. Dominic returned to his desk and sat down heavily. His phone buzzed. Tyler, how's hell? Dominic typed back, I think I just met my future wife. Tyler, it's 3 p.m. Have you been drinking? Worse, I've been talking to a girl who's out of my league. Tyler, R.I.P. Dominic, R.I.P. indeed. Part 5, in which phone calls happen and feelings become complicated. The call came 4 days later, on a Wednesday evening when Dominic was in the middle of a particularly thrilling dinner of ramen noodles, the fancy kind that cost $1.50 instead of 50 cents, and reviewing his summer reading for his advanced corporate finance seminar. The number was unknown, which meant it was either a spam call about his car's extended warranty or an existential crisis waiting to happen. He answered, Dominic, it's Amy Stone from the Mercedes. Dominic dropped his phone. He picked it up. Hi, hello, Amy, I remember, the Mercedes. Your face? Your car. I remember your car. Smooth, very smooth. There was a pause, then a laugh. Are you okay? I'm having a medical episode, but please continue. Should I call back? No, I'm fine. What's up? Is something wrong with the car? The car's perfect. I actually called because... Another pause. Okay, this is going to sound weird, but I've been thinking about your thesis proposal. Of all the things Dominic had been expecting, that wasn't it. You have? I know. I'm supposed to be enjoying my summer, going to parties, doing normal teenage things. Instead, I'm thinking about economic theory and ethical investing. My therapist would have thoughts. You read the whole thing? You sent it to your professor. It was in the email chain. I might have read all of it. Dominic sat back against his apartment's wall, which was thin enough that he could hear his neighbor watching what sounded like competitive cooking shows. That's either really flattering or really weird. Can't it be both? Fair point. The thing is, Amy continued, and he could hear something in the background. Music maybe, something instrumental and melancholy. I've been working on this art piece about economic systems and how they shape social structures, and your thesis actually gave me some ideas, and I was wondering if maybe you'd want to get coffee sometime and talk about it. Dominic's brain presented him with several responses. Yes, absolutely yes. When and where, and I'll be there. Is this a date or an academic discussion? Because I need to know how much to panic. What came out was, are you sure you want to get coffee with someone who works at a car dealership?
Are you sure you want to get coffee with someone who judged you for working at a car dealership? Touché. Besides, Amy said, and her voice was softer now, I think I might have been wrong about you. The whole finance bro thing. You're more complicated than that. I'm really not that complicated. I just have opinions about capital allocation. Everyone has opinions about capital allocation. Not everyone writes 40-page papers about how to use those opinions to make the world less terrible. When you put it that way, it sounds almost noble. Don't let it go to your head. Dominic smiled, alone in his apartment, eating ramen and having what was definitely the strangest conversation of his life. Okay, he said. Coffee.
When? Are you free Friday afternoon? He was supposed to work Friday afternoon, but Barry owed him about 17 favors after the computer incident. I can be Friday afternoon. There's a place in the East Village, Abrazo. Do you know it? I'll find it. 2 o'clock? I'll be there. They were quiet for a moment, and Dominic could hear his own heartbeat, which was doing something rhythmically inadvisable. Dominic? Yeah? This is weird, right? This whole thing? Completely weird. Okay, good. Just checking. She hung up. Dominic stared at his phone. Tyler emerged from his room, looked at Dominic's face, and said, Oh no. Oh no? You have the face. What face? The face you had when you decided to turn down Goldman. The face you had when you switched your major from economics to finance so you could focus on sustainable investing. The face you get when you're about to make a decision that's either brilliant or catastrophic with no in-between. I don't have a face. You absolutely have a face. What happened? The girl from the car dealership called me. The hedge fund manager's daughter? Art history major's daughter? Even worse, what did she want? To get coffee, to talk about my thesis. Tyler sat down heavily. You're going to fall in love with her, aren't you? I don't fall in love. I make rational decisions based on compatible values and mutual respect. You're going to fall in love with her. Tyler, you've already fallen in love with her. Dominic looked at his ramen, at his thesis notes, at his entire carefully planned life trajectory that didn't include spontaneous coffee dates with impossible girls who read his academic papers for fun. Maybe a little, he admitted. You're an idiot. I'm aware. But also, Tyler grinned. This is the most interesting thing that's happened to you since you tried to explain Keynesian economics to that bartender. That was one time, and it was relevant to the conversation. It really wasn't. Part 6, in which coffee is consumed and truths are told. Friday arrived with the special kind of dread and anticipation usually reserved for final exams and dental appointments. Dominic changed his outfit 4 times, settled on jeans and a button-down shirt that said, I'm casual, but I also know how to dress myself, then changed again, because Tyler said he looked like he was going to a suburban dad's barbecue. Abrazo turned out to be a tiny coffee shop in the East Village that looked like it had been designed by someone who believed coffee should be a spiritual experience. The space couldn't have been more than 200 square feet, with exactly 3 tables and a line of people that suggested the coffee was either excellent or people just really liked standing in lines. Amy was already there, sitting at one of the tiny tables, wearing paint-stained overalls and a white t-shirt, looking like she'd walked out of an advertisement for artistically troubled youth. She waved when she saw him. Dominic's heart did the thing. Hi, she said as he approached. I already ordered you a cortado. I hope that's okay. If you don't like it, I can get you something else. I just assumed since you seem like someone who has opinions about coffee. A cortado is perfect, Dominic said, sitting down across from her at a table that was approximately the size of a dinner plate. Their knees bumped. Sorry. It's okay. This table was designed for small people or people who don't have knees. A niche market. Very niche. The barista brought over 2 cortados in small glasses, and Dominic took a sip. It was, genuinely, the best coffee he'd ever had. Okay, Amy asked, watching his face. This is liquid gold, right? I found this place freshman year of high school. Used to come here every Saturday before art class. She wrapped her hands around her glass. Sorry, I know that makes me sound insufferably pretentious. You are insufferably pretentious, Dominic said, but so am I, so it works. She laughed, and the sound made something in his chest unknot.
They sat there for a moment, drinking perfect coffee in the afternoon light filtering through the window, and Dominic thought, this is what they write about. So, Amy said, your thesis. Right, the thesis, my 40 pages of economic rambling. It's not rambling, it's actually really well structured. Your argument about how traditional ESG metrics fail to account for second-order effects in local economies, that's something I've been thinking about in my art. How do you think about economic theory in art? She pulled out her phone, scrolled through some photos, and handed it to him. This is my senior project. It's called Wealth Extraction as Performance Art. Dominic looked at the image. It was a large-scale installation, what looked like hundreds of dollar bills arranged in a spiral pattern, gradually dissolving into what appeared to be soil or ash at the center. It's about how wealth isn't created, it's extracted, Amy explained. How money moves through systems, leaving some places rich and other places barren. How we talk about generating wealth like it's this neutral thing, when really it's about taking resources from one place and concentrating them in another. Dominic scrolled through more photos, seeing different angles, close-ups of the detail work. This is actually brilliant. You sound surprised. I'm not surprised. He looked up at her. You're the real deal, aren't you? The real deal? Someone who actually believes in what they're doing, who's not just going through the motions or checking boxes. You actually care about this stuff. Amy looked down at her coffee. Is that weird? In my experience, kinda. Most people I know at Yale are very good at pretending to care about things while mostly caring about their resume. And you? Dominic considered this. I think I started out pretending and then accidentally started actually caring, which is probably worse. Why worse? Because now I'm stuck. I can't just get a normal finance job and not think about whether my work is actively making the world worse. I'd become insufferable. Welcome to the club, Amy said. We have meetings on Tuesdays. They smiled at each other, and Dominic realized that the 3-year age gap that had seemed so significant a week ago had completely dissolved. Whatever this was, this connection, this understanding, it had nothing to do with age and everything to do with the strange alchemy of meeting someone who saw the world through a similar lens. Can I ask you something? Amy said. As long as it's not about my car sales technique, because I'll be honest, it's terrible. Why are you working at a car dealership? If you're at Yale studying finance, you could probably get an internship somewhere more relevant. Dominic took a long sip of his cortado, buying time. This was the question, wasn't it? The one that got to the heart of things? My mom's a managing director at Goldman Sachs. My dad's a partner at a venture capital firm. They met at Wharton. I grew up in Greenwich, not far from your dad probably, and went to private school and had every advantage a person can have. Okay, and I felt guilty about it. Still feel guilty about it. So I decided I was going to make it on my own, or whatever nonsense privileged kids tell themselves when they want to feel like they've earned something. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. So I turned down the Goldman internship my mom lined up and took a job at a car dealership to prove, I don't even know what. That I could work a normal job? That I understood the real world? It was stupid. It's not stupid, Amy said quietly. It's a little stupid. Okay, it's a little stupid, but I get it. Wanting to prove you're more than just your parents' connections. Wanting your achievements to mean something on their own. Is that why you're going into art history instead of, I don't know, whatever your dad wanted you to do? He wanted me to study economics or political science, something practical. She made air quotes. But I've watched him be practical my whole life. Watched him make money and be successful, and also be not exactly unhappy, but not exactly happy either. And I decided I'd rather be poor and doing something I love than rich and doing something I tolerate. That's very romantic. I'm a very romantic person. You called me a future Wall Street overlord. You can be romantically cynical. It's my whole thing. They were both smiling now, and Dominic realized they'd been talking for almost an hour. The coffee shop had gotten busier around them, but their table felt like its own small world. Your turn, Dominic said. I told you my privileged guilt story. What's yours? My privileged guilt story? Everyone in our tax bracket has one. Amy laughed. Fair. Okay. She paused, thinking. My mom left when I was 10, moved to London, married a earl or a duke or something equally ridiculous. She sends expensive presents on birthdays and Christmas, and calls every few months to ask how I am in that way that makes it clear she's not actually listening to the answer. I'm sorry, Dominic said, and meant it. It's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but it is what it is. Dad did his best. He tried to be both parents, which mostly meant he worked constantly and I raised myself. We have a good relationship now, but for a long time, she trailed off. For a long time, I was really upset. At her for leaving, at him for not fighting harder to make her stay, at myself for not being enough to make her want to stay. Amy, I know it's not rational. I know her leaving had nothing to do with me, but feelings aren't rational, are they? They're just feelings. Dominic reached across the tiny table and, without thinking about it, took her hand. She looked down at their joined hands, then up at him. This is a date, isn't it? She said. I think it might be. I thought we were discussing economic theory. We can do both. That's very on brand for you. I'm a multitasker. They sat there, holding hands across a table the size of a dinner plate in a coffee shop in the East Village, while around them the city hummed and buzzed and lived its complicated life. For the record, Amy said, I'm glad I was wrong about you. For the record, Dominic replied, I'm glad you bought a 35-year-old Mercedes. It was fate. It was a car purchase. Fate disguised as a car purchase. That's not a thing. It is now. Epilogue, in which futures are discussed and endings are beginnings. They dated through the rest of that summer, in the way of people who are either going to burn out spectacularly or burn on forever. Dominic taught Amy about capital allocation theory. Amy taught Dominic about postmodern art. They argued about everything. Politics, economics, whether the Smiths were actually good or just pretentious. Amy, good. Dominic, pretentious. Compromise, pretentiously good. August Stone, for his part, took the relationship with the kind of resigned acceptance of a man who'd learned to pick his battles. Though Dominic did notice that he suddenly started asking very detailed questions about his career plans and his 5-year financial projections. In August, Amy moved into her dorm at Columbia. Dominic returned to Yale for his senior year. They texted constantly, called every night, visited on weekends when they could. It wasn't easy. Long-distance relationships never were, especially when one person was trying to survive senior year at Yale and the other was trying to survive freshman year at Columbia while also completing an art installation about economic inequality. But it worked. Or rather, they made it work, which was probably the same thing but felt more intentional. Dominic graduated summa cum laude, turned down 6 different job offers from traditional investment firms, and accepted a position at a small impact investing fund that paid about 1/3 of what Goldman would have, but felt like the right choice. Amy's installation piece won a university-wide competition and was featured in a group show in Brooklyn that got reviewed in the Times. They moved in together after Amy's sophomore year, into a tiny apartment in Queens that cost too much and had dubious plumbing, but was theirs. Sometimes, late at night, when Amy was working on a piece and Dominic was reviewing investment prospectuses, they'd sit together in comfortable silence and think about how strange it was that a car sale had led to this. Do you think we would have met otherwise? Amy asked once, paint-stained and tired and beautiful at 2 a.m. Eventually, Dominic said. Different universe, different circumstances. You would have called me a capitalist pig. I would have called you an idealistic artist. We would have argued our way into falling in love. That's very romantic for a finance person. I contain multitudes. You contain spreadsheets. Romantic spreadsheets. She laughed and kissed him, and outside their window, the city that had brought them together continued its endless motion, full of people buying cars and making art and falling in love in all the ways that made sense and all the ways that didn't. And somewhere in Greenwich, a 1987 Mercedes 560 SL sat in August Stone's garage, waiting for the next time his daughter came to visit, a silver reminder that sometimes the things we think we want turn out to be exactly what we need, even if the airbags were substandard. The end.
I love making these videos for you. If you liked this story, then please like, subscribe to my channel, and switch on the notifications for more entertaining stories. Please also leave a comment for any story suggestions.